Welcome, everybody. It is now Friday morning, 2:21 a.m., and this is on October 25th, 2024. And this is the Eric Johnson Space Administration commentary and coverage of NASA and SpaceX's Crew-8 Splashdown. I am EJ, your host, and I am attempting to be a little bit more professional with these VODs, probably failing. So, Crew-8 has spent 235 days on orbit, or at the ISS, and they are now coming back. They were relieved 2 weeks ago by the Crew-9 mission. Crew-9 launching with 2 people on board. Nick Hague and Alexander Gorbanov. Crew-9 is currently on orbit with the Dragon, and we will go through entry, descent, and landing and splashdown coverage from there. The crew coming back is hang on. The crew coming back is Commander Matthew Dominic, pilot Michael Barrett, Mission Specialist 1 Jeanette Epps, and Mission Specialist 2 Alexander Grabenkin, who's a Roscosmos cosmonaut. They undocked from Dragon on Wednesday and have been free-floating, basically waiting for the right time to be lined up with her landing site near Pensacola, Florida. They're landing in the Gulf tonight. But I'll stop talking, and let's jump into the SpaceX coverage here.
Put both vehicles through thousands.
Because, Frankie, you probably don't want to look at me. You probably want to look at Kate,
Section
which is
known as
fair.
The trunk, which we spoke a little bit about earlier. At the top of the pressurized section of the spacecraft is the nose cone, and that protects the docking system and also the guidance navigation control system, or GNC system. The nose cone opens for docking and remains attached to the Dragon spacecraft the entire time, unlike the previous version of Dragon, where the nose cone, we jettisoned the nose cone, and ultimately keeping that attached helps toward our reusability efforts. Now, opposite of the nose cone is the trunk. That is that unpressurized section at the bottom that I mentioned. It provides attachment points for Falcon 9, the Dragon spacecraft, and for cargo. One half of the trunk is actually covered in solar panels that provide power to Dragon during flight and while it's on station. That is the black side of the trunk. The other half, which is painted white, contains a radiator that rejects heat from the active thermal control system to space using our new Pika tiling technology.
Yeah, baby.
The trunk now also has new aerodynamic fins, which provide stability in the event of an emergency abort. Now, I mentioned abort. In the event of an event such as that, Dragon is outfitted with 8 Super Draco thrusters, and those would power the astronauts to safety. Dragon's Super Draco launch escape system is a key safety feature of Dragon and gives the crew the ability to quickly separate from Falcon 9 and safely escape from the time of the launch all the way to orbit. This is a feature that no other spacecraft in history has possessed. Dragon is also equipped with 16 Draco thrusters, and those are used to orient the spacecraft during the mission, including apogee and perigee maneuvers, orbit adjustment, and attitude control. If you tuned in to some of our docking or undocking webcasts, you might have actually seen some of those Draco thrusters firing live in action. Now, each Draco thruster is capable of generating 90 pounds of force in the vacuum of space.
There's our
I want
crew.
to point out here we have our first views inside the Dragon capsule with our Crew-8 members. It seems as though everyone is sitting very comfortably inside their seats as they await their return back to Earth. Now, the seats that they are sitting in there, the spacecraft is designed to accommodate up to 7 crew members, like I mentioned just a couple minutes ago. Obviously, you can see today we're only flying 4. The modular seats, these are modular seats, and they can be removed and replaced by additional cargo, which is
Matt
what we
and
do
Mike.
when we fly 4.
Damn, that's cool. And you could even
The
see
seats themselves are made of carbon
Alex
fiber
over there.
and will be custom sized for any crew members flying on board.
Jeanette is in
meaning,
the seat that way.
Bucket basically their bodies rest in, as well as the footrests and the armrests, all have the ability to. We have the ability to customize the length of each of those pieces so that everyone remains comfortable and
okay, check this out here. So this is your MFD on Dragon. You got your checklist here for entry, descent, and landing. That's the elapsed time. This is the T- until entry, descent, and landing operations start to begin. It looks like 1 hour, 2 minutes. That's time to landing, I think. The other information there was the orbital parameters that Dragon is currently in. But what I was saying, guys, is you're getting an interior shot on a spaceship traveling 17,500 miles an hour, or about 7,600 meters a second, 27,000 kilometers an hour, just being streamed to you right now. Actually being streamed to me and then streamed to you. Look at, you can see Alex over there. You can see him blinking. Like, it's not any, I mean, like, once again, if you've been following dragons, it's not anything new, but it still blows my mind that you can actually, like during the shuttle, you couldn't see people talking like that, especially during operations like this. Like, you know, they would do like promos from inside the spacecraft, but if you watch like footage of the in-cam shuttle stuff, like, you don't really see people's faces too much, right? Like, you know, it's kind of abstract. But look, you can see Matt. Matt's just chilling right there. And Matt and Mike, the commander and the pilot, you can just see him stretching out. Whatever. It's no big deal. Yep. All right, this is cool. That's wild to me, man. Like, you could just see they're going through the mission and stuff, but...
Station. So to prepare for some of the upcoming events, Dragon is currently doing a couple of things autonomously.
Yeah, I know, Geek. One wonders, is there a graphics card somewhere in the Dragon capsule?
Discussing that white portion on the trunk. This system is
there probably is a GPU in here to render this stuff. Yeah, sure. It's probably not like a... It's not like they don't have like, it's like, oh, they just took an off-the-shelf graphics card, guys. It's probably some type of custom chipset, if I had to guess. Check this out. So, like I said, 7,600 meters a second, 7.64 meters a second, or kilometers a second right there. You have your current altitude. There was apogee, perigee, inclination, and I didn't see what the last one is. I always forget what it is. But you can see the 3 astronauts, 1 cosmonaut there. And you can see the cargo that they're bringing back down. They cut a couple of ISS racks down there and a couple of extra things, a couple of extra bags.
A little memorable to me.
That was my second that I got to see in person.
Oh, it was just beautiful. It was a
it might be,
Twilight
drummer.
launch, gorgeous.
Orbit sequence start in 2 minutes.
2 minutes to the start of entry, descent, and landing.
Dragon copies.
And with that call down from the core here in Hawthorne up to Matt Dominic, the commander of Endeavour, letting us know that we are nearing the deorbit sequence start. Things are continuing to move along smoothly.
So the person you're hearing communicate inside of the capsule is Matt. Matt is sitting in that seat over here. He's the commander of the mission. Commander sits left seat. Pilot sits right seat. Mission specialists, the mission specialists sit left and right. That's Matt right there. That's Matthew Dominic. He's a Navy pilot. He flew missions in Iraq and a lot of missions supporting the global war on terror. He's a very experienced Navy pilot. He's just piloting. He's just flying this spacecraft right now. Now, I said that he's piloting. I mean, he's kind of commanding the autonomous sequences. He could take manual control if he needs to, but you're not gonna do that.
In the capsule.
So he's the commander of the mission. He's the one that's kind of controlling at least initiating automated sequences on the capsule. You have a pilot. You have the pilot, Michael Barrett, over here. Michael Barrett's kind of basically the co-pilot, right? The way to say this would be like Matt is the pilot, Mike is the co-pilot, right? But nobody wants to be called a co-pilot on a spacecraft, so it's commander and pilot in spacecraft naming nomenclature for NASA.
Launching Mae Jemison, the first African-American woman astronaut into space, performing the first servicing mission
Maybe
for
TJ,
the Hubble Space Telescope, and delivering the Unity module to the International Space Station.
Hey, Dave, what's going on?
Some big shoes to fill, and Space Shuttle Endeavour is the shuttle that is here in Los Angeles. We're eagerly awaiting for the new display to wrap up, and we'll be able to see it in its vertical launch position. But yeah, that's
Astro, you're a longtime tank watcher. Recently found
after.
you've been loving
Yes,
the content.
absolutely. I'm very much so looking forward to
Hey,
that.
man. Thanks, man. I appreciate you watching, Astro, over in the YouTube chat. Thank you very much. It means a lot to me. But the truth is that I'm a tank watcher, too. As a fan of, I've been a longtime fan of NSF, lurking in those streams, and kind of watching from afar until they brought me on one day. That was pretty neat. That phone call was a pretty good phone call, you know, let me put it that way. But yeah, thanks, man. I've been tank watching since Starhopper, dude. Right there with you guys.
Necessarily the deorbit burn. It's a little confusing there. It is the deorbit sequence as a whole. So we're now in that phase, and like
You need to play
Sandra
StarCraft
said,
on the
fall
ISS.
separation,
StarCraft's already been played on
which
the
is
ISS
the
like 20 years
mechanism
ago,
that
Blue.
keeps the trunk attached to the Dragon capsule, will be released, and we will jettison the trunk, which will leave the heat shield at the base of the pressurized section exposed, which is very important given that the heat shield is what is going to be doing the majority of the work during the re-entry phase.
Yes, absolutely. That heat shield is critical to the return of Crew-8 and every spacecraft that returns from space, because
Yeah, I know,
as the
Blue.
spacecraft
I actually
re-enters
learned that the other
Earth's
day.
atmosphere,
Pretty
that
neat, right?
plasma builds up around the spacecraft.
Granted, it was
and
Brood
very
War. It
intense heat
wasn't
builds
like
up at
Wings of
that point.
Liberty.
But the heat shield helps
But,
to protect the crew, the cargo, whatever is in that spacecraft that is returning, so that it can either land or splash down after it makes its way through the atmosphere. And that re-entry into the atmosphere, it also helps to slow the spacecraft down immensely.
So, Phantom, I wonder how bad their ping would be if they played multiplayer games in the ISS. Their ping would actually be super low. Just there's no bandwidth, so it would lag to all hell. Interestingly enough, the ISS has a super high-speed internet connection. It's just most of the bandwidth from that high-speed internet connection is taken from telemetry downlinks to NASA. Yeah, interestingly enough.
Eastern time. Just a few seconds after that will be the separation of.
Forget that girl that is in the NASA uniform. Force, that's Sandra Jones. She's a NASA Public Affairs officer with Johnson Space Center.
This deorbit burn will last about 9 minutes.
Sandra's pretty good. Her commentary doesn't suck.
The point in which the
she's pretty good.
forward Draco thrusters,
Kate's
the
awesome.
4 Draco thrusters
Kate's commentary is
located
the
at
best.
the top of the Dragon capsule,
Her and Jesse
will fire for
amazing.
that period of time to lock in, and basically that is the point of commitment for return for the Crew-8 crew. Once again, we are targeting.
When will Dragon get a Starlink dish so we get footage during entry interface? 2 months ago. Polaris Dawn flew with one Raiden. It wasn't during EDL though, it was for the EVA footage. They wired a Starlink antenna into the trunk of the Polaris Dawn Dragon. Not a lot of people know that, which is pretty cool. That's how we were able to get such good EVA footage.
The crew floated aboard the
So it
International
kind of has
Space
happened,
Station
but not
on.
exactly what you're
And as
saying.
you mentioned, we are targeting Pensacola for splashdown today, and I'm hearing that the weather is just pristine.
No, it's okay, Forrest, no problem.
Winds
Just
are about
bringing
2
you up to
knots,
speed, dude.
which is 2 miles per hour. So very, very minimal winds. I expect that we'll see very low wave heights. And if you've been following along with this mission, you know that weather has been a watch item for us with this particular mission. There were a couple of hurricanes that moved through the Florida area, and then some additional storms that caused some of those parameters, whether it be winds, wave heights, precipitation, lightning. We look at all of these factors.
Nominal trunk jettison.
Okay, claw detachment and trunk jettison. There we go.
Dragon Captain.
All right. Great news there. So not only
copy from
did
Matthew
we
Dominic.
perform the claw separation, but we also jettisoned the trunk. And that
But
call
Jalen-
was from SpaceX Core, which is located there in
Nice.
SpaceX Mission Control Hawthorne, which is the view there. Those are our operators that are on console monitoring and controlling Dragon. And yeah, so that is a good call out. So next up will be the deorbit
It'll
burn.
be just fine.
Like I said
So
before,
if they
this
put an
will
antenna
last
on the ISS.
9 minutes long, and everything so far is looking good for splashdown of Crew 8.
Yep, and with that trunk separation being confirmed, that means that telemetry is now looking good. The nitrox system is primed for cabin and suit cooling, and the heat shield is exposed and ready for atmospheric reentry. Again, that's very important. The trunk served its purpose by gathering energy from the sun through its solar cells and converting that to battery power. And since we will be separating the trunk, we can't generate any more new power, but we don't need to since we're coming home, and Dragon does have enough battery power already stored up ahead of that deorbit burn.
Next up, the final steps that Dragon will perform prior to reentry, the slew or maneuver to deorbit burn, and the attitude and the deorbit burn itself. This is the last time that the forward Dracos, which are, like I said before, those 4 thrusters that are located on top of the spacecraft, it is the last time that those will ignite. The deorbit burn will place Dragon on a precise trajectory to return to the splashdown site off the coast of Pensacola, Florida, and will last about 9 minutes once it begins. We anticipate that to initiate at 11:39 p.m. Pacific time, 2:39 a.m. Eastern time. So we're standing by
About
right
1
now.
minute.
Everything continues to look good. We will, of course, bring you views inside Dragon capsule once we get them again, but sometimes due to ground station coverage, we are unable to do so. So unfortunately, you're stuck with Sandra and I.
And I am hearing that Dragon is in that deorbit burn attitude. So just another milestone as we plug ahead this evening. And it's very important that that angle is correct for the deorbit burn, because if you go too high or too low in the atmosphere, you're not going to come in at that right trajectory and have the heat shield be able to do its job. And then, of course, you wouldn't be splashing down in the targeted zone. So Dragon is in that deorbit burn attitude, and we will stand by for the deorbit burn to begin in just about a minute from now.
Once again, that deorbit burn is what
Hey, Paul.
locks the
What's up, dude?
capsule into its landing site. Of course, like Sandra mentioned earlier, we have been watching weather for quite some time. We were, everyone's excited to bring Crew 8 home, but only going to do that if the weather allows and is safe for both the crew on board as well as the recovery teams. And so it has been a little bit of a waiting game, but everything is looking good weather-wise.
What's my favorite Falcon 9 Force? Orbcom 2. First Falcon 9 landing. I was there. I saw it land. Saw the first Falcon 9 land. It was amazing, actually.
Draco thrusters, again, those are the ones located at the top of the capsule. And once that is complete, we will be able to close the nose cone. It's important to do this before the Dragon capsule begins to experience aerodynamic heating as it re-enters the Earth's atmosphere. It's important to get that nose cone closed so that we are able to protect the forward hatch and all of those components.
Remember on December 22nd, 2015. I was there.
It's a period of high heating, and so we really want to make sure that that nose cone gets closed in time.
That was nuts,
and
dude.
it usually takes about
who knew what floodgates, what all kinds of floodgates that would open, dude.
While we are under
lead into stuff like
from
this.
Splashdown, once again, we're targeting at 12:29 a.m. Pacific time.
Crazy. I wish I could have been there for that.
Eastern time splashdown.
There will be other times.
Under an hour, and things are going to move fairly rapidly, even though you might hear us say things like, this is going to last 9 minutes, this will last 8 minutes. It certainly goes fast.
Yep,
no,
absolutely.
there is not.
We are standing by for confirmation that that deorbit burn has
no way
begun,
for Dragon to fuel up at the ISS. There's no need for that.
Burn is underway. That burn is slated to last Less
I know,
than
Space
9
Brew, it's
minutes,
pretty crazy.
8 minutes and 20 seconds, so just under 9 minutes there. So as a little quick recap, within the last 10 minutes, Dragon has jettisoned its trunk and initiated the deorbit burn just seconds ago. For these operations, NASA and SpaceX closely coordinated with the United States Coast Guard to establish a safety zone to ensure public safety and for the safety of those involved in the recovery operations.
Yeah, Mason, if
as
I was
well
going to
as the
cover
crew
stuff on
board the returning
on
spacecraft.
site, it'd be with
Multiple
NSF
notices
because
are
you get the good
issued to the
connection, and then
mariners
we
in
would
advance
restream
and
it
during
here.
recovery operations, and Coast Guard patrol boats are deployed to discourage boaters from entering the splashdown zones.
Yeah,
We do want
it's
to
probably a good
stress to the
idea.
public the need to respect this safety zone. Recovering a spacecraft from the water is a hazardous operation, and any other boats interfering increases risk to astronauts in Dragon, the teams working to recover them from the water, and the safety of those if they come too close. So for the safety of the crew and your safety, we recommend you sit back and watch as we'll be bringing you the very best possible views of our astronauts' homecoming.
As I mentioned earlier, this deorbit burn is the last time that those 4 forward Draco thrusters will fire. Dragon Endeavour has not yet entered the Earth's atmosphere. This deorbit.
What are they doing in the background of the control center? The mission control is on the factory floor for the factory where they make Falcon 9s, Paul. Yeah, what you're seeing in the background there is the assembly lines for Falcon 9, dude. Yeah, interestingly enough. I've walked in that building before. I had the privilege of doing that in 2016. I haven't been there in a long time, but yeah. Like dead center behind mission control, right there. That's where they make fairings. That's the mez. That's where you eat lunch. Over here is engine octaweb integration. So Merlins are made back there, and then they put them all together in a Falcon 9 thrust structure right there. You can see a dude working on one right now. Kate and Sandra are up on the mezzanine up here, and the camera's looking down that aisle. That's this aisle right here. You can actually see an interstage back there between them. See it? See the big dark thing? Interstage. That's the top of a Falcon 9. And then see that tall gray thing right there? The tall gray thing behind him is what's called a Falcon 9 barrel segment. The barrel segment is basically 4 sheets of aluminum, milled aluminum, aluminum lithium, right? And you take the 4 sheets, right? Each one of them is like a quarter of the way. Put them together. You put them together in a barrel jig, and they stir weld them together. And you stir weld that, and that makes the jig, or that makes the barrel. Falcon 9, it's very interesting here because Falcon 9's second stage is 1 barrel segment. Falcon 9's first stage is 4 barrel segments. If you look. Now there's Matt. Hold on.
Like we mentioned before, this
Oh, they're
is
not
the
on comms.
longest
Oh, check it out.
human
See?
spaceflight mission in a Dragon
Yeah,
capsule.
the SpaceX makes 1 barrel segment for the first and second stage. The first stage is 4 barrel segments. Second stage is 1. It's just where the bulkheads are on those systems. Yeah, true story. It's like they made it like Kerbal. That keeps the cost down because your first and second stage use the exact same tooling, and you just have to make 1 or 2 different bulkheads and thrust structures there. So what you're seeing on the screens here, it's not a disco going on there. The screens are showing the pulse width modulation of the the regular Draco thrusters on Dragon. They're kind of flashing them back and forth. The reason why is because these types of thrusters contain a passive cooling system. The cooling system is the nozzle being made out of a special metal alloy using, I think, niobium, if I'm remembering right, that relies on thermal radiation. Basically, the nozzles glow. You can't pulse if you just turn the engine on and you keep it on, it'll get too hot too fast. But by pulsing the engines, you're controlling the temperatures on the nozzles, and they're able to shed the heat as much as you're introducing it from firing the thruster. Remember, you're in a vacuum. You have to use thermal radiation to keep things cool up there. Because there's no convection, and you do not want that heat conducting back into your spacecraft. That's the problem that Starliner had. They pulsed the thrusters too hard, right? So you could see their pulse width modulation. They're flipping back and forth. There's 4 forward-facing thrusters that they're using for deorbit right now, because Dragon's kind of basically flying forward, and they're firing the forward thrusters that are up in front by the nose cone, and they're pulsing them back and forth. So it's 1 4 3 2, 1 4 3 2, 1 4 3 2, 1 4 3 2. You could see that. You could see them pulsing on the screen. See? They're going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. They're doing that to make sure that the thrusters don't overheat.
Includes landing a helicopter on the recovery ship to fly Matt, Mike, Jeanette, and Alexander back.
So this is their entry, descent, and landing screen. They're over here. They're coming up over here right now. You're looking at the Gulf of Mexico upside down. There's Florida. That's Cuba right there. That's the Yucatan Peninsula. Texas is right here. And yeah, the Gulf Coast is all right there. Is there any Russians on board? Over there, flying far right seat relative to the front of the spacecraft. That's Alexander Grabenkin. Yeah.
We expect this to complete.
Doing some old lug nut patterns for a four lug hub level 1. Yes, absolutely.
Finishes. Once again, our live views inside the Dragon Endeavour capsule with the Crew-8.
So you can see, because the thrusters are still firing, that they're still doing their deorbit burn. But if you look right there, they're bleeding off velocity. They were at 7.64 kilometers a second, and now they're at 7.54. This pulsing delta V burn is probably only about 60 meters a second at best. I couldn't really read the numbers before. I know it's 7.54 kilometers a second right now, but you can see that number will go down to 3 here in a second.
And we were getting a good view of Matt. Oh, there we are, right on time. A good view of Matt Dominic. He is the
Hey, Leo, what's up, dude?
Endeavour. This is his first space flight, and I have just so enjoyed seeing the photography that he has been able to capture.
Incredible.
Yes, if you have not seen it, please do go check out our social media pages.
Greg,
our
I'm
Twitter
not
account.
convinced until they have
He
something
really
tangible.
took to the photography
You know?
during his mission and his
Talk is
captured
cheap.
some just
Actually,
breathtaking,
put something into
spectacular,
space with it, and then we'll talk.
images. I think the only thing that could be better is if I were able to.
They're
see
pulsing the
it.
engines like that because it looks cool. Sure. See, look. Their trajectory, see how their trajectory is shortening up because they're slowing down. They're trying to target basically right where my mouse cursor is. So they still got a little bit of burn left. If they stop burning right now, they'd land in Georgia. Yeah, probably not a good thing. You don't want to Donnie Darko someone's house.
Section is the section that we see here on our camera views, where the Crew-8.
You can see that they're lowering their perigee here. The perigee is currently reading 24 kilometers. That's the lowest point.
In the next 60 seconds or so. This was a 9-minute long burn, and it is the final burn that lines up the trajectory for the Dragon capsule with the targeted
Phantom,
splashdown
right.
site.
Just catch it like the booster, Fivehead. I love how that's going to be the end-all, be-all solution for catching everything, for like bringing back stuff from space from now on.
Deorbit burn complete.
There it is.
Performance nominal. Nose cone closure initiated.
Okay, so those thrusters are on the forward-facing parts. They're on the forward-facing parts of Dragon, and they're covered by the nose cone. So the nose cone is going to close here and basically protect the docking port and the thrusters up at the front of the spacecraft.
A couple minutes to complete. We have
No,
basically
not
12
yet,
months on
MSF.
the
That's
next
going to
one
happen in
that will
February.
lock in with the Dragon capsule, and those will close in a series of in 2 different series, so 6 each.
Completely
Yep, and those
unrelated,
are
but
the
you know how the
same
Mars
nose
EDL
cones
Sky
that
Crane was
were,
tested?
Nose cones. The same.
Don't know.
The same
Nate,
way
not
that
off the top of my
hooks
head.
that, were used yesterday to actually unhook from the International Space Station, and as it backed away, if you were tuning into our coverage for that. So in the background,
Yeah,
Dragon
yeah,
is
yeah.
currently inhibiting those forward bulkhead Draco thrusters that we just used to complete the deorbit burn, ensuring it's safe to.
Paul, you just looked at Hawthorne on Google Earth, and there's a Falcon 9 first stage on display. Remember how I was talking a little bit earlier about what my favorite mission is? That's the Falcon 9 that flew it. I watched that Falcon 9 land in 2015. I watched it land. It was nuts. Still crazy to me. But now we see that happen almost every day, which is just like, All right.
And the crew will continue to use their screens to monitor.
That's booster
the walking of the
1019,
nose cone,
the
which
19th
is
Falcon
done by
9
that
first
set of
stage ever
hooks,
made.
12 in all.
Well, the capsule
So we
survived
did hear
entry
that
if the nose cone failed to close and latch. They can
close
dump it,
is
Nader,
underway.
if it
We
doesn't
expect
latch.
to
You
be
can
closed
jettison
in
it.
about a minute or so. And again, this nose cone has remained open since the crew launched all the way back in March. This was nearly an 8-month mission that the crew spent aboard the International Space Station, conducting science, performing research.
Is there an ETN splashdown?
investigations on not only themselves,
About
but on
about
a
30
variety of
minutes,
topics, from
Irish.
physics to flame studies.
Show them
But
that
it
photo
is
you and
interesting that
Das
the
under
crew
Falcon
themselves
9.
actually is a part
Dude,
of
I don't
the
even know if
science
I could.
experiment. The International Space Station has been continuously occupied for over 20 years, and we continue to learn more and more about how the body adapts to microgravity.
That's a shot
And it looks
looking
like we
forward
are
on
starting
Dragon
to
with the
see
nose
a
cone
view there
closing.
of the nose cone as it does begin to close up. You can see that on your screen. Expecting that nose cone to be fully closed in just moments from now. And we'll stand by for that nose cone to go ahead and be closed up. Again, we expect that call out here in just a few seconds from now.
While this nose
It's going
cone
to take me
closure
forever to
is
find that
underway,
tweet. That tweet
this
is like 10 years
the,
old.
Final physical change that Dragon will undergo today. This, like we mentioned earlier, we jettisoned the
How do you
trunk.
find that stuff
and now
so
we're
quick, drummer?
closing the nose cone. And once that nose cone is closed, Dragon is basically in its final of a high dynamic loads or aerodynamic.
How's that picture for you? There's me and Das. If you guys know
loads and heating.
NSF,
the heat shield
yes,
will
that
be doing
Das.
quite
It's
a
me
bit
and
of work
Das
during
about a
that
decade
time
ago,
and helping to
standing next
slow
to
the capsule
1019.
down, significantly. In fact, right now they are still going at orbital velocity, and when they begin to
That's way
enter the
before Falcon
atmosphere,
9 Block
the atmosphere
5.
is going to
Yeah,
be pushing
Nate.
back
That's
on the
like
capsule and helping to slow it down.
I
And,
think
that energy is turned into
1019
heat
is
at
a
the base of the
Falcon
heat shield,
9
and that heat shield helps
1.2 full
protect the
thrust,
crew
Block
and
1.
the capsule during that phase.
Yeah.
By the time that the drogue parachutes deploy and help slow the capsule down even more.
No, that's
basically
inside
that
of the barriers,
re-entry
Mason.
period sees a deceleration
Falcon
from
9's big, dude.
17,500 miles per hour down to 350 miles per hour. So while the atmospheric
Falcon's
re-entry
boring to you
is,
now? Oh, no.
is a, we see the Dragon capsule come back with
Kate?
some toasty marks on it. It's for good reason. It really actually helps do quite a bit of work to help slow the capsule down itself. So we are standing by.
Needed. What is Dragon's yaw
for-
cross-range
actually, I
capability
did
for
just hear
re-entry?
that, we have confirmation that,
It's more than you might think level, but it's not nearly as much as like the space shuttle. Capsules actually utilize what's called they utilize an offset center of mass. So the center of gravity isn't on the dead center line of the longitudinal vector of the spacecraft. So like if you were looking at a Dragon from the side, like the nose cone is here and the heat shield is right here, you drew a line straight through it, the center of gravity is actually offset to one side or the other. That makes it so the capsule is actually, like if this is the heat shield, it's actually going to come in, the heat shield's going to come in kind of crooked. And if you roll the spacecraft in either direction, you can modulate the angle of attack of the heat shield. So if they roll 90 degrees to the right with the RCS, right, you'll be able to turn your trajectory left and right. It's not very much, like maybe 20 miles at best. It's not a lot, but it's more than you might think. You can actually do that in Kerbal if you weigh down one side of your capsule with like an ore tank. You can roll the capsule and modulate your angle of attack on your heat shield. That's something that they figured out during the Apollo program. And that's how they got the Apollo capsule to skip off the atmosphere coming back from the moon, because they would turn the heat shield into the wind like this and it would skip off, right? And then you'd flip it upside down to decelerate. It's pretty crazy, dude.
primarily of a SpaceX proprietary ablative material. It's another class of thermal protection which is lighter weight versus Pika and protects the underlying composite structure during that reentry phase to ensure that the structural capabilities are maintained, and that also helps to make sure that our Dragon capsules are easily and rapidly reusable.
And while Dragon
It
will
said that the Dragon
experience
capsule is the only
temperatures
vehicle to
well
ever
over
have full abort
3,000
capability
degrees
from launch to
Fahrenheit
orbit.
during peak reentry conditions, the characteristics
Yeah,
of the
you could put an
TPS or
asterisk
thermal
next to that
protection
1062,
systems,
but
coupled with the ECLIS environmental control
technically
and life
she's not
support
wrong.
system in the pressurized interior will ensure that Matt, Mike, Jeanette, and Alexander stay cool and comfortable during all phases of reentry through splashdown. And again, we are now less than
It's
an
like
hour
skipping a
away
rock?
from
Yeah, kind of.
splashdown off the coast of Pensacola, Florida, targeting that splashdown at 12:15 a.m. Pacific time. And we are now less than 20 minutes away from the start of that 7-minute blackout period where we won't have
Hey,
communications
Redbeard, what's
with
going on, buddy?
the crew due to that blackout period as the ionization builds up around the heat shield we just discussed.
Now, after Dragon Endeavour has re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, we will deploy a series of parachutes to help slow the crew's descent. First will be the 2 drogue parachutes, followed by...
Nose cone secured for entry.
Okay.
Dragon capsule still moves.
All right, great news there. Confirmation that all 12 hooks of the nose cone are in place and that nose cone is now secure and closed. So fast forwarding a little bit back to re-entry, and more specifically when we're deploying the parachutes, the first 2 parachutes that will come out are the 2 drogue chutes, and those will be followed by the 4 main parachutes
Not that I know
will help
about,
guide
Shadow Man.
Dragon to its first contact with Earth since launching back in March 4th to
Gotta
be
get a cup of
exact.
coffee.
Dragon will automatically deploy these parachutes when different pressure and positioning sensors on the spacecraft detect that they are at the right speed and altitude.
Vehicle velocity
per layer
at drogue
2 is
deploy
red.
is approximately 350 miles per hour, and they deploy at about 18,000 feet. Vehicle velocity when the main chutes deploy is approximately 119 miles per hour, and they deploy at 6,500 feet. And then vehicle velocity...
Nate, was the shuttle big enough to punch a hole for communications through the plasma similar to
The highest
Starship?
payload the crew will experience during re-entry is approximately
No,
25
not really. The shuttle has a wake. Like, if you picture a
So
boat
we
kind
are
of floating through the
standing by
water, it
for
leaves a wake.
initiation of
And the wake is kind of conic, but if you're behind the boat, the wake's kind of going away from you, right? Plasma leaves a wake kind of like that, but it's in 3 dimensions. But when the shuttle was coming in, right, the wake from the plasma goes up this way, and then it obviously shoots down off the body flap. But the antennas for the shuttle are actually on the top, the short band antennas. They're on the top of the flight deck by the 2 windows on the top of the shuttle. So when the shuttle was coming in, the antennas are up here. The antennas are the wake is kind of far away. So if there was a TDRS satellite behind...
And this view here is actually a view from our recovery vessel.
Nice.
Megan.
The tracking data and relay satellites could actually get a line of sight to those short band antennas on the shuttle, and that's how we got footage from reentry. It's not so much that the shuttle punches a hole through the plasma, it's that the satellite is behind the wake. Starlink satellites are doing the same thing, but the reason why Starlink satellites are a little bit, you get a really crystal clear picture is because, well, Starlink satellites are 21st century tech and TDRS is 20th century tech. But the tracking data and relay satellites are also 23,000 miles that way. So, you know, a little bit of, you know, signal quality with the technology from the time. But you could still get pretty good footage from inside of the shuttle. Yeah.
Places that it can be seen.
You could get inside footage of the shuttle. It just looked like you were watching TV from the 70s. But you can do it. They had onboard cameras during reentry, especially towards the end of the shuttle program. It was a treat to freaking watch, dude.
And see, it'll look like a very bright comet or shooting star streaking through the Earth's atmosphere as it re-enters.
So this view once again coming to us from our recovery vessel
So
Megan out in the
that's the moon. The gray parts of the moon are the lunar lowlands, the lunar basaltic regions. These areas, as the kids would say, are super cooked. They're super cooked because something hit them. Something hit it, Something hit the moon that was quite large. As you could tell, a lot of things have hit the moon in the past. But something hit it so hard that it heated up all that and kind of burned off a lot of stuff. The heat and the energy from the impact was transmitted as heat into the moon. Those lowlands are basically the result of parts of the moon basically burning off. I mean, it didn't happen exactly like that, but that's close enough. That's why there are lava tubes on the moon, but there's no volcanic activity on the moon. Because whatever hit it made some lava, because it made heat from hitting it from a collision. True story. The crumbs that Jupiter missed, indeed. Super Cook, no hat, France. Hey Dan, what's going on? Hey Jay, do you know if Dragon capsules have temperature transducers through the hull to detect temperature spikes, kind of like the shuttle did? It's probably much lower fidelity than the shuttle, Dan, because it's a heat shield versus 30,000 tiles. But yeah, there's instrumentation on that heat shield. Absolutely.
Eastern Pacific time. Or 3:17 a.m.
Good question, dude.
So, all that being said, we're
never knew that. Yeah, Dons, that's why one side of the moon is always facing towards us, because something slapped that side of the moon and it impacted and deposited more stuff on that side. So the moon, despite being more or less spherical, is denser on the side that's close to us. So it basically, that's why it's tidally locked, because one side of the moon is thick, like dummy thick, and the other side isn't as thick, right? Don't get me wrong, it's not like crazy big, but it's enough to make it so the moon is always, one side of the moon's always facing towards Earth, because the center of Earth's gravity is trying to pull the moon's center of gravity, which is offset from its geometric axis. Yeah. Fun fact. If there's any Kerbal players out there, going to the moon, you just put something in orbit and you can stay there. In real life, there's decaying orbits on the moon because of this gravitational perturbation, because non-uniform gravitational pull. Yeah, oh yeah, you can have decaying orbits on the moon. The moon will pull you in, because one side's dummy thick and the other side isn't. Sun said dummy thick, that's right, boy. Got your attention, didn't I? I got your attention, didn't I? Is that the reason for tidal locking for other celestial bodies? Not necessarily, Daytown. Not necessarily, but it could be. Might sound stupid, but is the moon moving away or towards the Earth right now, or is it not at all? It's moving away, Slackster, very, very slightly. Do you know what's doing it? Earth is doing it. Oh, yeah. Weaker core? No. Precession. Earth is the same way, guys. Earth, the center of gravity of Earth is not in the dead geometric center of Earth. It's offset. Earth, and that's part of the reason why Earth kind of weeble wobbles around, why we have an axial tilt, why it weeble wobbles around. You guys are surfing on the cooled crust of a gigantic nickel iron jello mold. Yeah, it's just like a big jello mold, kind of wobbles around like a deflated basketball or something, like yeah. Oh yeah, that precession, those precessional forces from Earth, because it's all this churning and bubbling. What is that, all that churning and bubbling? You call that a radar? No, sir, we call it Mr. Coffee. All that churning and bubbling is actually pushing the moon away. Yeah, the Earth's precession is pushing the moon further away by about that much a year. It's not much. You guys are surfing with the alien. Fun fact. On Mars, you have Phobos and Deimos, and it's actually the reverse effect. Deimos is actually being pulled in. I think it's Deimos. Deimos or Phobos. One of those is actually being pulled in and will eventually crash into Mars. I am space. Yep. I always have my coffee when I watch Radar. You know that. Yeah, it's pretty sweet, Dan. That'd be a pretty good view. Phobos is being pulled in. Thanks, Mats. Yeah. Will that mess up Earth? Phobos? No. Phobos does not have enough gravitational pull to perturb Earth's orbit at all. Don't get me wrong. Everything affects everything. You know, the sun's affecting everything. Jupiter affects Earth. Earth affects Jupiter. Equal and opposite reactions. It's just everything perturbs everything, right? Anything with a gravitational pull. So, like, if your mom floats near Earth, she's going to pull Earth towards it. You know what I mean? No, seriously. Like, the gas giants are tugging on planets, and they change the orbit a little bit. Obviously, everything's floating with the sun, so wherever the sun goes, we're all going with it, because the sun's gravity is way bigger than anything, including your mom.
Dragon SpaceX for entry briefing.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
Dragon's ready.
All right, Endeavour. Good to report that there are no deltas to the timeline. The
No
team
changes?
right now is tracking no issues on Dragon, and our landing site weather still looking beautiful with a wind speed of 3 knots, a wave height of half a foot, and a wave period of 6 seconds. How copy?
Pretty fair seas.
That is tremendous news. We're going to go visors down, our sights are secured, and our restraints are tightened.
Copy that. Dragon crew entry preparations are complete.
Yes, that's right, Slackster, yes.
Dragon copies.
Okay. So we got fair seas
All right,
for,
so great news
for entry.
there as we heard SpaceX Core call up to the Crew-8 team, letting them know that there are no changes to the anticipated timeline. So still tracking a 12:29 a.m. Pacific, 3:29 a.m. Eastern Time splashdown
22
off the
minutes.
coast of Pensacola, Florida. We also heard great news about the weather. It's pretty calm. While we haven't seen the view of the water surface yet, I have a feeling it's going to be rather glass-like based on the description of
24/7,
a
365
0.6
hours,
wave
3
height,
shifts since
and
2002.
3 knots of wind speed. So all in all, really good news, and it's still looking great. Like I mentioned, 12:29 a.m. Pacific time. So 22 minutes from now, we'll have the Crew-8 crew back on Earth.
Yes, and that comes after a mission duration of 235 days in space. The crew traveled 99 million statute miles during that time period. We saw
Statute
the
miles,
arrival
yeah,
of
baby.
8 visiting vehicles and the
Right.
departure of 8 visiting spacecraft. Some of those were crewed spacecraft with other crew members on board. Some of those were cargo resupply missions. So it has certainly been a very
Yeah,
busy
TJ, you
increment
missed what I'm
for
talking
them.
about. The
There was also
implication
one
there is that
spacewalk that took place with NASA astronauts.
the implication behind the moon having volcanic activity, you know, despite being the moon, is that it appears to have evidence of plate tectonics, but it doesn't. That was what I was trying to get at.
5 hours and 37 minutes in all.
That's really impressive.
Any missions
so
upcoming
once
you're
again,
forward
for
to?
those
You
that
looking
have
forward
just
to?
recently
Nate, the
joined
next
us,
Starship
the
mission.
Crew-8
I want more.
capsule
I'm
Dragon
hooked.
Endeavour
I want more,
is,
please, please,
making its way
please.
back to Earth. We are anticipating a splashdown
Would
of
Phobos hitting Mars
12:29
mess with
a.m.
Mars orbit?
Pacific,
Yes.
3:29 a.m. Eastern Time off the coast of Pensacola, Florida. The next event that we have coming up will be the anticipated
Mats,
loss
you know.
of signal. This is
You
a
know.
brief
I want
about
more.
a few minute long period in which we are unable to communicate with the capsule or the crew. This happens every time
Me
we
too,
bring a
Rev.
Dragon capsule back to Earth. We anticipate the loss of signal to begin at 12:15 a.m. So just 6 minutes from now. And
More or less,
that
Dan,
is
yep.
a result of the plasma that's building up on the exterior of the capsule. It's a moment in which it gets really
Yeah, HD.
hot on the
More!
outside. The external temperatures can reach up to 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. But thanks to the thermal protection systems around the exterior of the Dragon capsule, as well as the cool air that's being flowed through the suits that the Crew-8 astronauts and cosmonaut are wearing. They stay relatively comfortable and cool during the entry phase, so nothing to worry about there. But we do anticipate the acquisition of signal to come back at 12:22 a.m. for a total of a roughly 7-minute period of blackout. That's not exact. Sometimes we're able to get comms back a little bit earlier, so you'll actually hear SpaceX Core, the crew operations and resource engineer. That is the voice that we've been hearing throughout the events today, speaking to Commander Matt Dominic. You'll actually hear the SpaceX Core begin to hail
Karina,
the crew a little
live.
bit earlier, just to see if we get those comms back.
Karina over in the YouTube chat.
Absolutely. And so the crew is suited up during this portion of the...
Karina over in the YouTube chat. Dusk launch and catch with Starship landing in daylight this time.
Once they're removed from Endeavour as well.
Yep. I want it. I want it. I want to see what one of these things look like coming back from re-entry. I have to see it. I need more. Give me more Starship. Elon.
5 minutes until anticipated LOS. We'll see you on the other side at 0723 Zulu.
Okay. Ollie? Oi, Mike?
Discovery, go at throttle up.
Good copy from the crew.
Good readback.
And a good readback.
And those words
Gamer,
from the Core
25
here
months,
in
thank you.
Hawthorne up to the Crew-8, particularly to Matt Dominic, who is the commander of Endeavour.
It's just a SpaceX
letting
thing,
them
Samba,
know that
but
they'll
Core
see
and
them on the other
Capcom
side of that
are
blackout
interchangeable. That
period,
means the same
expected
thing.
to end at
Core is just
12:23
SpaceX's name for it.
a.m. Pacific time this morning. So again, the spacesuit
About 4
does
minutes,
help
Space
to
Brew.
protect the crew if
Till you get a loss
needed.
of signal. They're in
It is
they're in
flame
entry right now.
resistant as well. And the outer layer also helps to protect the crew in any event of a fire. It's also custom tailored and is a single piece suit. This means that the helmet, gloves, and boots all remain attached. The helmet is made from 3D printed nylon and has a visor that pivots open. The quick disconnect, or QD, on the right thigh mates to an umbilical on the seat and provides air for ventilation, oxygen, nitrox for pressurization, and allows for the electronics to be connected all from a single location on the suit. A tubing network inside the suit delivers air to the neck and limbs to keep the crew cool while wearing the spacesuit. And the suit's communication system consists of helmet-mounted microphones and in-ear speakers, which the crew has been using to communicate with the ground. It takes less than 15 minutes to put on the spacesuit, and this is what we call an intravehicular activity, or IVA suit, designed for use inside Dragon. When the astronauts move onto the International Space Station, the suits do stay on board Dragon. And then the astronauts wear NASA's extravehicular activity suit, or EVA spacesuit, when outside the International Space Station conducting those spacewalks. So everything continuing to go smoothly this morning. We are awaiting the next major milestone, which is the blackout period, when the crew does begin to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere, and we'll start to feel some of that pull of gravity for the first time in nearly 8 months since their launch back in March.
Live view there of the team on console, continuing to monitor Dragon as it makes its way back to Earth. That is SpaceX Mission Control, located in Hawthorne, California. And like I said, it's where our teams monitor Dragon, checking in on all of its systems, help make sure that the crew has a safe journey. Our team in Mission Control follow their progress all along the way. On console or headset are 6 key positions who are monitoring the health of the vehicle and the crew. The mission director is responsible for mission success and is in charge of that room. The person that we hear talking to the team up in space is the Crew Operations and Resources Engineer, or CORE. The other positions are focused on vehicle systems like navigation, control, avionics, software, propulsion, life support,
CORE is right there.
and of course
Mission director's
communications
right
with
there.
the ground segments. So lots of specific roles being filled there at the Mission Control in SpaceX.
Yes, absolutely. And I am hearing that Dragon has slewed to the final entry attitude and is beginning that entry interface period. So we'll stand by as this blackout period begins, and then of course, we'll catch the crew with those comms on the other side of it. So in addition to Mission Control Hawthorne, there is Mission Control Houston, a very familiar place for me, which is staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There you do see a shot of Mission Control Houston on your screen. Team members here are trained in a variety of disciplines and
Zeb
monitor
Scoville's
all
on
of the
console.
space station systems.
Cool.
And just like Mission
I think
Control at
that's him.
SpaceX, we have someone dedicated to talk to the crew members to streamline
It looks like Zeb.
communications. This keeps the astronauts from needing multiple
Might
conversations
be
on
wrong,
different
though.
subjects. This role is the CAPCOM, which stands for Capsule Communicator. However, this person isn't actually talking with the spacecraft. That's SpaceX's core. The Capcom is speaking with the astronauts already living aboard the International Space Station. And the Capcom does sit right next to the flight director. The flight director gathers information and data from all flight controllers and leads the team through major milestones. They approve or decline suggestions based on pre-established flight rules. Other key members include the ADCO, who controls the attitude or orientation of the space station. We also have the visiting vehicle officer, or VVO, who monitors the work and works with external teams sending spacecraft to and from the International Space Station. There's also a flight surgeon who works with the astronauts to get a chance to speak with them on a regular schedule on private medical conferences. We also have Robo, who works with the Canadarm2 to maneuver it to complete work
Canada
outside
mentioned.
of the space station. When astronauts are on a spacewalk, the Canadarm2 is maneuvered by an astronaut within the International Space Station. And there are many other positions and team members who monitor the station's solar arrays, the astronauts' schedules, and even where every single piece of equipment and cargo is stored. So it takes a tough and competent team to make a mission successful. And we now are in entry interface and do have that loss of signal with the crew. Again, this is expected as they make their way through the Earth's atmosphere. It will last just a few minutes, and then we'll begin to hear the ground call up to the crew for a comm check. Sometimes that comes a little sooner than expected, sometimes a little later. It just depends. But we do expect to regain communications with the crew once we are out of this entry interface period.
Right now, the crew on board Dragon Endeavour, of course.
Who's the all-time best Capcom explorer? My favorite capsule communicator is a capsule communicator I had the privilege of meeting. Charlie Duke. He was the capsule communicator during the Apollo 11 landing, and then went to the moon during on Apollo 16. That's my favorite Capcom. I don't know about you guys.
During the deorbit burn. So now they continue to monitor that. They are adjusting their cameras in preparation for drogue shoot deploy. They are also continuing to monitor velocity and
Roger, tranquility. We copy it on
basically
the
keep
ground.
tabs on how things are
bunch of guys turning
progressing.
blue down here. We're
Like we
breathing
mentioned,
again.
the
Thanks a lot.
period of loss of communication, which is what we
Makes
are
me
now
happy
in.
just
We
thinking about it.
anticipate that to end, also known as AOS, or acquisition of signal. We expect that to occur at 12:23 a.m. Pacific time, 3:23 a.m. Eastern time. We might hear SpaceX Core begin to hail the crew a little bit before that. We also might hear our commander,
Absolutely.
Matt Dominic, also
Matty D.
say hey before we even begin hailing them. So this period of blackout varies from mission to mission. It's not super precise, so we will attempt to regain those communications at the earliest reasonable opportunity, but this is totally expected. This is what happens every time we bring a Dragon capsule back through to Earth. The temperatures can reach upward of 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. This is why we see, once the Dragon splashes down, we see that the exterior, which was a nice pristine white at liftoff, and while it was on orbit, becomes...
What causes the variations in blackout? The entry trajectory, Nate, ground station coverage.
The structure of the capsule as well as the astronauts inside. So, for those that have
Solar
recently
winds
joined
can
us,
disrupt
we
the
are in
signal on top of the
expected
plasma. It's
blackout
just a lot of
period.
stuff
We
going on.
anticipate this to end at 12:23 a.m. Pacific. The team there on your screen located at SpaceX Mission Control here in Hawthorne, California, as well
There you
as
go,
the
Nate.
team in Houston at Johnson Space Center continue to monitor.
I'm good. You
Like I
good?
said before,
Good.
the Crew-8 team is also monitoring using their systems as well. Prior to this dynamic event, they had already closed their visors. They had already stored the tablets and any other loose items, including the zero-G indicator, of course. So they are well prepared, and like we mentioned, they will remain in their suits until after they splash down and after the recovery team retrieves them from the water and helps them egress from the capsule. Once again, we are anticipating a splashdown off the coast of Florida near
HLS
Pensacola,
Slackster?
so
2.
in the on the Gulf side of
Yeah, I know.
Florida. Our recovery vessel Megan is standing by, waiting for the Crew-8 cohort to return. The recovery team.
Yo,
First
let's
view
go!
of Dragon Endeavour making its streaking appearance across the sky. This view comes to us from the recovery vessel.
Yeah, baby.
Megan, as I mentioned earlier.
And
I'm on
we
home
actually
now.
do have a very special guest, Shaniqua Vereen, a public affairs officer at the Johnson Space Center.
This
She's
is from the
on boat
WB-57
right now.
flying at
Shaniqua,
19,000
can you hear
feet.
us okay? And let us know what you are seeing right now as we watch Crew-8 streak through the atmosphere, about to splash
On Wednesday,
down. Let
Matt.
us know what you're seeing.
Yes, Sandra. Hi. I hope you guys can hear me loud and clear. I am on a recovery vessel, Megan, as you stated. We are getting our first views here on the ship as well. I'm with
Dude.
NASA photographer who is seeing the navigation lights as well as the streaking across the sky. It's a pretty exciting time right now on the recovery vessel. All personnel that's not on the FAST are up at the front of the hull of the ship, just watching it as it comes in. Again, the Megan is stationed about 3 miles, about 1.5 nautical miles away from the splashdown zone, and we're looking to have the crew splash down
Come on,
in
baby.
just about, 6 minutes, 5-6 minutes, and so we're catching all the views until the
Oh, yeah, you
parachutes
could see
deploy
this
and
talkative.
they
Yeah,
splash down in
oh,
motion.
yeah.
That
It
is
looks
so
like a
excellent,
shooting
Shaniqua.
star.
I am
'Cause
jealous
it's not
of the
that
view.
far
I mean,
off.
it's beautiful on our
It's about the
screen, but I
same.
can't even imagine what it looks like in person. So soak that in.
So, if you guys have ever seen a shooting star, it's a micro. That's what it looks like. That right there. That's what it looks like. This is visible light. The other shots were infrared.
The commander of Crew Dragon Endeavour as they
Oh,
come out of this
that's
blackout
so
period.
cool.
But again, we're continuing to get great views of Crew-8 as they are re-entering
that's-
the Earth's
that's the
atmosphere.
bow shock up
again,
there.
standing by to regain those communications, expecting that
And
in
then
about a minute or so.
Plasma starting to dissipate, indicating a huge loss of speed.
Dragon, SpaceX, comm check.
Come on, Maddie.
Wow there, how are
Yeah.
We have you the same.
All right. Through the plasma blackout.
Great
Big
news there.
Big step.
Blackout period over. We heard the voice of Commander Matthew Dominic. Now coming up at 12:25 a.m. Eastern, or excuse me, Pacific, 3:25 a.m. Eastern, we will deploy the drogue parachutes. Now, frame of reference, prior to the period, coming through the Earth's atmosphere.
Dragon is on GPS. Expect automated chute deployment at nominal altitude.
Dragon copy.
Yeah, she's glowing a little bit.
All right, just a call out there, letting the crew know how Dragon is calculating the when and how to release the parachute. So the drogue chutes are going to come out first. There are 2 of them. This occurs
Yeah, see, it's cooling
around
off.
when the capsule's going about 350 miles per hour or so, roughly about there. Those will deploy, and then about a minute or 2 later, the main parachutes. About a minute later, the main parachutes will deploy.
Dude, that's the RCS
And that-
firing.
At
Look.
that point in time, the capsule will be going
Sick.
about 120
Yo.
or so miles per hour. So those drogue parachutes do quite
That's
a bit of work,
awesome.
as well to help stabilize and slow the Dragon capsule down. So standing by now for deployment of the drogue parachutes.
Brace for drogue window.
RCS keeping it on an even keel for, to get the drogues to deploy. Once the drogues deploy, those should shut off.
And this view again is from the WB-57. That's one of our high altitude planes as it continues to track Dragon ahead of those drogue parachutes being deployed. And shortly after that, we'll see the main parachutes deployed. But we'll stand by for those drogues to go ahead and get deployed.
Nah, they're going to shut off when the chute's deployed, Dan.
We are hearing that Dragon has good pitch and yaw stability, so everything continuing to go really smoothly, targeting that splashdown at 12:29 a.m. Pacific time, so just about 4 minutes or so from now.
What speed is it going? 200-300 miles an hour, somewhere around there.
Once again, this.
There we go.
Here we can see that the drogue parachutes, thanks to that WB-57
Yo, something
views,
came
the
off.
drogues are deployed.
Something came off and hit the drogue.
We can see two good-looking drogues. Oh, this is
There's a
great
live
view
shot
from
looking
inside.
that's
the
looking up at the
parachute
drogue
bay
chutes.
Where those drogue
Drogue
parachutes.
chute descent rate nominal.
Next,
Dragon copies.
those drogue chutes will next pull out the main parachutes, and we'll see those 4 main parachutes open.
Drogue chutes are a type of chute that you deploy at high speeds, because if you try to deploy your parachutes going 200-300 miles an hour, they'll just rip right off. The drogue chutes are basically a little bit of a drag brake, and then once you hit the right speed, you unfurl and deploy the main chutes. Okay, looking for 4 good chutes here.
This autonomously, releasing.
It's going to take a second
each
for the
set of
chutes to unfurl.
parachutes. We can now see those 4 main parachutes begin to inflate. Pretty incredible to see how
We got 3 good
as
ones.
those main parachutes
It's gonna
inflate,
take a second for that
the
4th one to
capsule itself
get up there.
slows down even more significantly.
Main chute descent rate nominal.
Copy. Nominal descent rate 1,000 meters.
And 4 good
Copy,
chutes,
1,000.
3,300 feet off the
We'll
ground.
continue to hear call-outs from Commander Matt Dominic of the distance from the water. Those parachutes really doing their job now, as you mentioned, Kate, starting to slow the spacecraft down even more and more. By the time the crew actually does splash down in the water,
pig.
they'll be going about 15, 16 miles per hour.
Learned that one the hard way in
those
KSP, huh?
Parachutes really taking on that air to slow down the spacecraft.
800 meters.
2,500
Copy,
feet.
800.
Like you said, Commander, Matt Dominic will continue to report.
The 4th chute, guys, is a backup. Dragon can land on 3. True story.
Call out.
And we also heard that the descent rate was nominal or as expected. Another good call,
100 meters.
a good call out there.
Copy.
1,900 feet. Everything's looking good, AP. It could if the chutes failed, Mutter, yeah. If more than 2 chutes fail, it can land on the
Continuing
Super
to get great
Dracos.
views from the WB-57 as Crew-8 is nearing
It's an enabled
splashdown.
condition.
400 meters.
Copy, 400.
1,300 feet. The emergencies after the 4th... If more than 2 chutes fail, Skylance, they can land on the Super Draco thrusters. How many Dragon 2 landings have there been there so far?
200 meters. Bracing.
Copy, 200 embraced.
700 feet.
At this point in time, the seats in Dragon have rotated a little bit to help provide a more comfortable and safer bodily orientation for the crew members as they come closer to splashdown.
Yes, Mason.
Like we said before, the capsule's going about 15 or 16 miles per hour.
There's the splash.
And splashdown.
All right. Should get a report here.
And Endeavour, we see the same. On behalf of SpaceX, welcome home.
You should hear a call for stable 1 or 2.
And as you can see on your screen, we do have visual confirmation.
And NASA teams, what an incredible ride.
Again, we do have visual confirmation of Crew-8 successfully
Yes,
splashing
Paul.
down after 235 days in space. They are now back on Earth. Dragon Endeavour has returned home, and NASA astronauts Matt Dominic, Mike Barrett,
We're
and
back
Jeanette
home.
Epps and Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gurbankin are back on Earth
They
after
recovered
an
the chutes. You'll
approximately
see them go out
34-hour
on little
return
launch
journey
boats
from
and go and get them.
space.
As you can see, SpaceX recovery ship and team
No,
have
talkative,
been
never
waiting for
happened.
Dragon Splashdown, and
Unless
they're
you
now
wanna
making
count
their way
Soyuz
to
11,
the
but-
splashdown location. Teams have
Or
been
Soyuz-
ready
well,
and waiting
Soyuz
about
1
3 nautical miles away,
probably
so
be
it's
the
going to
closest
take
thing to
about
what you're
30
describing.
minutes for them to make their way
It was bad.
to Matthew, Michael, Jeanette, and Alexander. They're
Capsule's in a stable 1 condition. So what Dragon is designed to do is, if you look, there's the windows right there. Just below the windows, you see a little opening right there. It looks like a ghost. Ghosts! When Dragon bobs down into the water, this opening right here, that's a parachute compartment, right? That's where the parachutes were. That opening actually pulls in a little bit of water, but it's a watertight bulkhead in there. What that does is, I told you guys that Dragon has an offset center of mass. That helps it modulate its heat shield angle of attack during re-entry, so you can kind of steer where the capsule goes. If it just fell in and, you didn't have that thing there, it would tip over, right? Because the center of gravity's offset to one side. But when Dragon bobs down into the water, that parachute compartment scoops up a bunch of water, and that actually brings it into a stable mode. All right? That's why they didn't call it, but if you heard a call for stable 1 configuration, that means the capsule's upright. Stable 2 means the nose cone is facing into the water. But that shouldn't happen if you dunk into the water correctly. If you dunk into the water, that parachute compartment's going to scoop up a bunch of water and actually rights the capsule. It turns it upright because it moves the kind of center of gravity of the capsule more in line, and it lowers the center of gravity and moves it more in line with the long axis of the capsule, and that's what keeps it upright. You'll see it when they go to fish the thing out. You'll see a bunch of water shoot out of that parachute compartment, but that keeps the capsule in a stable, upright condition. This capsule is very reusable, Belgian. In fact, that's its 4th flight.
that the recovery
Here, I can check
team
it for
is
you.
safe, so we'll see that fast boat approach and perform initial safety checks to make sure there are no hypergolic residuals there on the exterior of the capsule. We'll then see that team begin to rig up the Dragon capsule with some fittings, some straps that will ultimately be utilized to lift the capsule on board our recovery vessel, Megan.
And we did have a good view there just a minute ago, and you can kind of see it here. The water is almost mirror-like. It's quite smooth. Very beautiful weather there
That was
off
its
the coast
5th
of
flight.
Pensacola for these recovery operations. So
thing's
as you
been flown
mentioned,
5
they are
times,
going to
dude.
begin to
Pretty
assess
cool.
capsule safety. We do see some of those fast boats begin to approach, and they're going to do some of those sniff checks, make sure that everything
do.
is as
Slackster,
expected
the
before they
supplies are
continue
actually
with
under the seats. You
operations
can
of
see it
bringing
if they show an
Dragon,
interior shot again.
closer to the recovery vessel and then eventually lifting it on. So we are now eagerly awaiting the recovery of our Dragon spacecraft with NASA astronauts Matt Dominic, Mike Barrett, and Jeanette Epps, as well as Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gurbankin inside. So Dragon has already...
It's pretty watertight, talkative. It can float for a little while. I don't know the full margins, but... So this capsule, Endeavour flew Demo 2, obviously, May of 2020, Bob and Doug. Then Crew 2, Axiom 1, Crew 6, and Crew 8, which is pretty cool. Can't believe that. I remember when we saw this dang thing launch for the first time. Can't believe it's been used 5 times since. That's bizarre.
Dragon, SpaceX is go for recovery personnel to approach. Expect personnel alongside in approximately 1 minute.
So if you guys remember all those thrusters that were firing right before drogue chute deploy about 5 minutes ago, those thrusters, the fumes from the thrusters are not good for humans. So they're sniffing. They have a gas sniffer that's that's basically looking to see if there's any leaks from those thrusters or if any of the fumes got caught up somewhere. Because if you breathe those fumes, you're not going to be having a good day. So they're sniffing around. You'll see that at every milestone in capsule recovery. You see somebody going around look with the thing that looks like it's from Ghostbusters.
As we saw just a little bit ago, performed its
They're
final
hypergolic
burn,
thrusters.
the deorbit burn, which placed the Dragon capsule on a trajectory
How did
towards
the Russian
Pensacola, Florida.
cosmonaut gets back to
Dragon
Russia?
successfully
An
re-entered
airplane?
the Earth's atmosphere, followed by deployment of its parachutes to slow the
It is
spacecraft
hydrazine.
down.
Yes, they're
to
using
a
monomethylhydrazine
gentle
and nitrogen
splashdown.
tetroxide.
So we're now going to follow along with the final part of Matthew, Michael, Jeanette, and Alexandra's journey as Dragon
Gonna have a bad time.
is prepared to be lifted out of the water
He
and
walks.
placed
Oh,
on
yeah.
the recovery boat.
And you might have heard a call out a couple of minutes ago.
Roscosmos
for something
has
called
their own
Stable
planes for moving
1.
cosmonauts
There's a
around,
couple
so
of different configurations
just like NASA
that,
has
Dragon
Gulfstreams
can
that
land
move
in.
NASA astronauts to
Stable
Russia
1
when
is
they
the
fly on Soyuz.
configuration that we are hoping for. So this means it's in the ocean and upright as expected, as you see on your screen as the
right.
lights do shine on it. So those fast boats continuing to approach and get closer. These will be the first human beings that Crew-8 has seen outside of their spacecraft since they were being strapped in ahead of launch by the closeout team at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. So upon detection of landing, Dragon automatically did release the main parachutes to prevent wind from pulling the spacecraft. And then Dragon automatically safed its pyrotechnics still present on the spacecraft and automatically performed additional minor system reconfigurations if needed. So the astronauts will remain seated and in their spacesuits at this point, but the onboard air conditioning keeps things temperature regulated inside the spacecraft so they can be comfortable, and the communication systems on board remain powered so the crew can continue to communicate, and we'll likely hear some of those calls back and forth from the ground to the crew inside Endeavour.
Yeah, you mentioned the automatic cutting of those
swears.
parachute lines. We often talk about how Dragon is autonomous and how it does things
Sniffing.
itself, but the crew is always there monitoring and ensuring that
this guy
things
for
are
what it's
going
worth.
as planned. So actually, one of
I'm
the
not sure what that
first
guy's doing.
actions that they have upon splashdown.
Oh, he's plugging.
Is
Oh no,
to
he is sniffing the
listen
thrusters.
for,
Yep. See, he's sticking.
for the cutting of those.
Okay, there's no good way to say this. That guy is sticking the sniffing probe up the business end of the thrusters to make sure that none of them are residually leaking. I can't say it better. He's moving the sniffer up to the nose cone because the 4 forward-facing thrusters that they used to do the deorbit burn are up behind that cone right there. There's no better way to say that. You know,
Boats in the recovery fleet, which you see there, that have moved rather quickly to that splashdown point. They are being followed by one
beautiful
of the main
infrared
recovery
here.
vessels, which will
look,
move into
look
position.
at how hot,
upwind
dude. Look
of
at how
the
hot some
spacecraft.
of that still
They put
is.
it
Isn't that
upwind
crazy?
just in case
That heat
there are
shield,
any
that heat
residual
shield is still
hypergolic,
toasty even though it's in the water.
Elements there on the exterior of the capsule, so putting the larger recovery vessel upwind.
See, there's that parachute
before
compartment that I was
having the
telling you about.
confirmation that there are no residuals. Key safety check there. The 2 fast boats have very specific roles.
Oh,
They're
go back to the
first
infrared,
view of
man.
Our second fast boat. The first one is focused on immediate safety inspection of the spacecraft integrity and checking for any presence of those hypergolic propellant vapors. And this helps ensure
Yeah,
that
they
it's
took the
safe for
respirators
the
off,
recovery
Rev.
vessel
Yeah,
to
we're good.
approach Dragon as well as the rest of the recovery team. Once Dragon
Hypergol sweeps and unfired ordnance checks are nominal. Rigging is in progress. Approximately 25 minutes until capsule lift. Stand by for PMC with the ship flight surgeon and Hawthorne flight surgeon.
Private medical conversation.
Dragon.
Basically, one of the first things that they do when the astronauts get back down is have a private conversation with the flight surgeon or their doctor, just in case they're exhibiting any symptoms that might be weird.
This is around, as you can see there, around
That's
the
a shame,
Dragon
Christian.
capsule. We also heard
I still think that's
confirmation
cool.
that the words that were used were unfired ordnance. Those are
I still think that's cool, not necessarily because of the flag part, Christian, but I think it's cool that people gave enough of a frick during DM2 to go out, sail 100 miles offshore, and to see a spacecraft come home. I think that's super cool. I honestly think they should still allow that. It's just they can't get within like a mile of the spacecraft, you know? Lasso in the capsule.
One veteran, so Michael Barrett, this is his, he has now completed 4 space flights, so it's a good opportunity even for everyone to
I thought the
check in with
flotilla was
the
cool.
surgeon,
Like I said,
let
not
them
because
know
of the
how
flag
they're
or
feeling.
anything, but because
And of course, that is
people
private.
showed up.
Now,
People are
we did
interested
get
in this
that
stuff. Don't
all clear
like
for
just
full
keep them
approach.
away.
So,
Don't
like I
have,
said,
like
that you can see that the team
don't get
beginning to
within a
rig
mile
up
of the
spacecraft
capsule.
for
Like
the recovery by the recovery
other than that,
ship.
I think that's super
That
cool.
second fast boat, which we see coming in and out of screen, is responsible for parachute recovery and
That's right,
also
Pierto.
serves
Yep.
as a redundant
Offset
boat
center of
to
gravity.
the first fast boat. We'll
It'd be even
also
worse
get
if
to
the
see
parachute
a team
compartment
member
didn't
on a
scoop
jet
up some
ski
water.
helping to gather up those parachutes that are now detached.
And it will take a little over 10 minutes for the recovery crew to complete
That's what
their
I was
safety
worried about,
checks.
username when it
But once
happened.
complete, the crew will begin preparing Dragon to be lifted onto the recovery vessel. And again, we do see that
Putting the rigging on there.
process underway. As part of the preparation for this lift, one member of the recovery team will climb on top of the spacecraft, as you see, so they can attach all those hoist rings.
Really kind of shows you how big Dragon actually is, seeing some people like sitting on the thing, right? It's not a small capsule. It's pretty big. It's a pretty big capsule.
From the spacecraft. And after medical checkouts, once on board, the crew will return to land within 4 hours by helicopter.
Dragon to ground is now public.
There you go.
Copy, Dragon, copy.
So after they return to land by helicopter, the crew will fly by plane back to Houston, where they will be reunited with their friends and their family, and then complete their post-flight period. And so again, we were getting some great views of Crew-8 after they splashed down. We'll probably get some more great views here momentarily. But
That's
everything
a nice
went
view
very,
of the
very
wall.
smooth this morning. The crew did
Baste it
splash
well,
down off the
please.
coast of Florida at 12:29 a.m. Pacific time this morning, following their undocking
Rev.
from the International Space Station yesterday. They did have a 34-hour time period in which they were returning back to Earth, now back home safe and sound after 235 days in space, 3 of whom it was their very first time in space. And so this is a view of Mission Control here in Hawthorne, California. The core was the main individual that has been speaking with the crew following their undocking from the International Space Station yesterday. We'll continue to hear some of those calls back and forth from the core, the crew operations resource engineer here at Hawthorne, particularly to Matt Dominic. He is the commander of Crew Dragon Endeavour, so he is the main astronaut that will speak with the core. And it looks like we are getting our first view there on the recovery vessel Megan. That circular object that you see in the center of your screen there, that is actually what we call the Dragon's Nest. That is where the Endeavour spacecraft will be lifted up and placed into. That's why we had to do that rigging ahead of this operation. We had to make sure that all of the harnesses were properly installed in order to hoist Dragon up into the Dragon's Nest.
Now, you mentioned communicating with the crew. We actually have a team member on board the Dragon, or excuse me, on board Megan, the recovery vessel that you see there. Shaniqua Vereen, we heard from her a little bit earlier during the just before splashdown. I can't wait to hear how the actual splashdown was. Shaniqua, can you fill us in on what it was to experience that?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear.
All right. I actually repositioned myself from the front of the boat to the back of the boat so I can see the Dragon's Nest and actually have eyes right now on Dragon Endeavour. Everything as far as splashdown was perfect. It was nominal. We could see the bright dragon in the sky coming back to Earth, and it was pretty extraordinary from my point of view. It's entered the atmosphere. We then heard 2 sonic booms, and then pretty soon after, we saw some navigational lights, red and then green, and then we saw some parachutes deploy here on the Megan. We then tracked Dragon as it slowly propelled down into the ocean. From here, you guys have been following along a little bit more. I had some better views, I think, of you guys. We tracked the Endeavor down, and we actually saw the parachutes from the fast boat being dragged a little bit here as they were clearing out the area for us to be able to recover Dragon. Again, you guys went over a little bit, but after we got all clear, the fast boats went in to make sure that there was no hypergolic leaks, that propellant leaks, and then we're right now inching closer and closer to the vessel as we see. I don't know if you guys have views right now, but as we're inching closer, we're backing the Megan closer to the Dragon Endeavor where it sits right now in the ocean.
Yeah, Shaniqua,
recovery force. Sorry, go ahead.
I think we have a very similar view currently as you. We are also looking off the aft end of the recovery vessel. We see a couple crew members there next to the Dragon's Nest, and we can also see the Dragon capsule. So I have a feeling that you're standing pretty close to the camera we got views from.
Yes, absolutely. And Shaniqua, you know, we have all been tracking this weather pretty closely throughout the return journey for Crew-8. From my perspective, those seas look like glass. Can you tell us about the landing conditions from your perspective?
Chill to be in the air.
Come on, X.
Move like 76 degrees. Beautiful, calm ocean as well as clear skies tonight. We had a couple of the flight docs pointing out the constellations as we were waiting for Endeavor to actually come in view. So it's been pretty amazing and clear. Just blue water. I was looking for dolphins or jumping fish off the side of the boats. This time I had that view a couple recoveries ago, and didn't happen this time, but still quite a sight to view.
Oh, that is just so wonderful to hear, Shaniqua. I do hope you bring some of that cool weather back home to Houston for us both, and I hope you get the chance to see your dolphin too. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Best of luck to you with the rest of the recovery. We're going to continue to follow along and keep up those live views. But thank you again for joining us. That was Shaniqua Vereen, Public Affairs Officer at the Johnson Space Center in Houston.
Reeling the capsule in.
And so we are continuing to get these views of Endeavor as it gets closer and closer to the Megan recovery vessel. We're continuing to see some of those lights from the recovery personnel around the spacecraft, as well as some folks near the nest that will help with the actual lifting up process of bringing Dragon on board the Megan.
That'd be cool, Tiger.
And once Dragon is secure and on the recovery vessel,
Toasted
we'll actually
marshmallow.
see it scooch
That's right,
forward
nominal.
a little bit before the crew is actually removed from the spacecraft. But before that, we'll open up the hatches and we'll continue to walk through all of that. But I'm just
Pat, I know what you mean. I'll be honest, guys. Sometimes, and I'm not afraid to do this. Sometimes it's fine to just, if you're commentating on a launch, this is kind of from my perspective. Sometimes it's better to just say less. People can see what's going on. They get it. It's on the screen. Trying to get that thing right there. Done. Sometimes you don't need to keep talking. Sometimes less words are better. Like, holy snot! Oh my goodness, they just caught the booster! Like, that's it. That's all you gotta say. People get it. You know, you don't need to, sometimes say less. Like when I'm commentating. If it's just me doing a stream, I talk a lot and I won't shut up. But yeah, you don't need to keep talking. Sometimes you just can chill.
As they have already begun to prepare to lower the vessel's hydraulic lift mechanism into the water, and that will help bring the spacecraft into that on-deck translation system, as you have heard us refer to as the nest.
More words
Dragon
when
will
few do
remain
trick?
in that nest during crew extraction and then for the journey back to port. So what is not super clear from this view,
If there was water being
the
taken on
Dragon
board, what's
capsule
the
will be
plans of
lifted into
exit?
that nest,
Unbuckle
and
and
nest
jump
will
out.
translate toward the camera that
That
we're
happened one
looking
time
from
during
now.
the Mercury
so that
missions.
nest will translate toward the forward end of the recovery
The
vessel.
explosive
and
bolts
that is
blew
where
on the hatch.
extraction
Dizzy.
platform is located.
The emergency
The,
egress system went off because it shorted
crew
in the
we can
water,
see
shot
there,
shot
in
the door off the
background
capsule.
Is continuing to prepare the Dragon capsule.
Well,
we can actually see
an astronaut
one
was
of the
still
recovery
strapped
team
inside.
members.
Oh,
This is
yeah.
probably the best view we've had of them so far, but we can actually
Yeah,
see one
Gus
of the
Grissom,
recovery
that's
team
right.
members on top of the capsule,
Liberty Bell.
helping to
Liberty Bell?
secure
It
the
was Liberty
rigging
Bell.
and the straps necessary to safely lift the Dragon
That was Gus
capsule
Grissom, yep.
out of the water.
And once open, a SpaceX medical doctor will be the very first one to check
Yeah,
in
imagine
on
being
Matt, Mike,
imagine
Jeanette,
being
and
hooked lying
Alexander,
down in a
just to see
spacecraft
if
and the
they're ready,
capsule
for
blows and then
egress
water
or
starts
getting out of
pouring
the
in. I'd be like, oh
spacecraft.
crap, oh crap, oh
So
crap,
Wall
oh crap, oh
Dragon's
crap, get
top
out.
hatch is used to connect to the space station, and that's kind of that pointy part that you're seeing at the top of the spacecraft. On the other end is the heat shield.
There you go,
the
Phantom.
top hatch is used to connect to the space station. The astronauts will egress from Dragon's side hatch, pending capsule orientation in the water, which, as we see, is in stable one, so they will be able to use that side hatch. But there are multiple options, so if Dragon
I'm
were
not
to
yawning, I'm making
splash
faces
down in
at
a
you.
different orientation, they could egress from the top hatch as well. So either option works, but today we will be using that side hatch. Before opening the hatch, the spacecraft's cabin pressure must be equalized
All right, I
with
gotta
the
use the
outside
restroom. I'll be
environment,
right back.
but it actually is equalized because we're here on Earth. So once the hatch is opened, that will be the crew's first breath of fresh air since boarding Dragon at the start of their mission all the way back in March, which is hard to believe. That was almost 8 months ago.
Yeah, time does fly. So this is a cool view here. I believe this is a drone shot that we have, and you can really get a sense of distance between the recovery vessel and the Dragon capsule and the speed at which the recovery vessel approaches Dragon. It is slow and steady, carefully choreographed, as pretty much everything in spaceflight is. And we can see the recovery team in the fast boat still working to prepare Dragon Endeavour to be lifted out of the water. We heard during the we heard in the post-deorbit burn debrief that the weather was really good. We can see that here live on screen. The wave height predicted was 0.6, so really mild. We can see almost a glass-like surface there on the water, and only a wind speed of only 3 knots. So overall, a beautiful evening for a Dragon to splash down.
And we are getting some good visuals
Yes, I washed my
there
hands.
of the
Of course I did.
helicopter pad on top
Ooh,
of
drone
the
shot.
recovery vessel Megan there. You can see the green lights of the helicopter pad. Once the crew is out of the spacecraft, they will depart back to the coast of Florida on board a helicopter before flying back to Houston and being reunited with their families at Ellington Field in Houston. So continuing to get those really great views there. It looks like the rigger is still on Dragon, if I'm seeing that correctly.
Yeah, they're standing in the bay where the main parachutes were housed prior to being deployed.
Yeah,
That's
Tom
right. And it
sees.
looks like that rigger this evening is Troy Werner. So we might get the opportunity to see him as he jumps off of the spacecraft, which is Kate's worst nightmare.
Yes. A moment I feel things for that individual when I see them perform that, and it's really admiration that they have the bravery to do that, especially at night.
Oh, I'd do that. I'd be like, woohoo! I'd belly flop.
Yeah, we can see
Be the best belly
him
flop
standing
ever. I
there
think.
in that bay where
Dragon, SpaceX, comm check.
Okay.
Loud and clear, Hollis.
Loud and clear as well. Transition from audio from Tidris to Megan successful. Rigging has been complete. Approximately 5 minutes until capsule lift.
Copy, 5 to lift.
Come on, Troy, hook up the rigging. Wait, why did they...
great news there, just
why did we go
giving
forward?
the
The boat
crew
moved.
an anticipated timeline for the remainder of the
Bye-bye.
recovery preparations. That lift sequence will happen quite quickly, so be sure to not turn away. The Dragon
would suck,
capsule will be
Mason.
lifted up and
I
out of the
hate
water
caves.
using those
And
hydraulic
I hate underwater.
arms
And I
that
hate
lift
underwater
that you
caves. I had a bad
can
experience
see
once.
there at the end of the recovery vessel on the left-hand side of your screen. It'll then be placed in the Dragon's Nest, which will then be translated toward the forward end of the vessel. And that all happens really from the moment that the Dragon capsule is lifted out of the water, basically about a minute, if my memory serves me correctly from previous recent recovery operations. About a minute for the nest, for the Dragon to be out of the water in the nest, and the nest to be translated to the forward
Everything's
end
good, Haley.
where
Yep,
the egress platform is located. Now, once the Dragon capsule is there next to the egress platform, we
believe
will
how calm
perform
the seas
another
are.
set
Look at
of
that.
safety checks to make sure that there are still no hypergolic vapors present on the exterior of the capsule. So we'll do another one of those before allowing
Troy.
the team to
Swan dive.
open the side hatch. We
Watch
can
the
see
guy at the
rigger
top of the
there now
capsule.
atop the Dragon capsule. I wonder if they have the opportunity to kind of put their hand down there and wave. That is the side of the capsule where, oh, there they go, into the water.
Dragon, brace for capsule lift. Dragon.
And a 5 out of 10 from the Russian judge. Oh, come on now. Here we go. Capsule's gonna lift.
All right, lift now underway as we bring Dragon Endeavor
In Denver.
out of the water. A great view from our drone. We can see the capsule now making its way toward the Dragon's Nest, and there's a good view of that egress platform, so you get a better sense of how far
This thing is on
that
rails.
translation
It'll actually
is.
move amidships. See the water in the parachute bay, like I was saying?
So you can see some
Cool, huh?
seawater there resting in the main parachute bay.
See?
Once the Dragon
Water?
is translated forward, we will see the team rinse off the capsule using fresh water
I'm
to
gonna go over there.
help arrest any corrosion that may be underway due to the presence of that salt water. Salt obviously being corrosive to metallics, and we want to prevent that as our
Salt is
Dragon
corrosive to
capsules
italics.
are reused.
Does he know about this?
And we are really starting to see kind of that toasted marshmallow effect because of re-entering into the Earth's atmosphere there. And then we did see a view of the side hatch. We'll continue to see that come into more view, especially
know about
as
this,
the
Phantom?
Dragon is translated a little bit closer.
Dragon, welcome aboard the recovery vessel Megan. Recovery personnel are completing their final checks. Stand by for translation to the egress platform.
Dragon copies.
Just the way she
And
said
so
metallics
Crew 8
sounded like
is now
metallic.
aboard the recovery vessel Megan after splashing down off the coast of Pensacola at 12:29 a.m. Pacific time this morning. The recovery vessel Megan is actually named after NASA astronaut Megan MacArthur, who was selected as an astronaut in 2000. She flew on Space Shuttle STS-125, which was the final space shuttle mission to the Hubble Space Telescope, and it actually helped to successfully improve the the Hubble's capabilities and extend its life. And then she also flew on Crew-2.
Yeah, she was actually the pilot for Crew-2.
There you go.
So we have two recovery vessels, one supporting Gulf operations, one supporting Atlantic operations, and this one is, as you just mentioned, named after Megan, and the other one is named after
Shannon
So
Walker.
we've actually named these two recovery vessels after the first two women to fly on Dragon, on our Crew Dragon missions.
And the fairing recovery vessels that SpaceX uses are named Bob and Doug, after the first two men that flew on Dragon.
The Draco sections, of course, those are no longer needed now that the crew is safely back on Earth. So they're working to plug those up as we
That's why
continue
they're
our
always,
recovery
it's always
operations
funny
this
to me
evening.
when they're like, we're going to go recover our fairings with our fairing recovery vessel, Doug.
how it's able to
Hey,
angle
Doug.
around the recovery
Do
vehicle
it, Doug!
to provide a more holistic snapshot of the teamwork involved in recovering Dragon capsules. With some camera views, we can see a couple individuals awaiting or doing certain preparations, and I love how we can kind of see more of the cohesive unit working together with these drone shots. We can see each individual performing their specific task. And this, of course, is something that the recovery team trains for extensively, both for daylight and nighttime operations. So this is something that each individual is well trained, well prepared
most
for.
likely a weather balloon.
And
Probably
we can
let
see
off
now
from there.
that the Dragon capsule is safely in the nest, like Sandra mentioned. We're going to be plugging up the Draco thruster outlets to help ensure that there are no hypergolic vapors that escape. We'll also perform another safety check, excuse me, to make sure it is safe for crew members to make a close approach. And we can see the team members removing some of the straps and the rigging that was necessary for
Is that soot?
capsule lift.
It's most of the thermal protection on the outside of the capsule
and we
that
will remove
got
those
ablated
to
off.
help
Talkative.
clear
It's
the way
paint.
to
Paint got
open
scorched off.
the side hatch.
The paint ablated
a
off.
great view there of that side hatch.
Got a little toasty
Once
in there.
again, this side hatch has remained closed since the Crew-8 mission lifted off in early March of this year. They
watched that.
docked with
I scratched the paint.
space station
Yeah, Sir Late will be
and egressed and ingressed from this capsule using the forward hatch, which is the hatch at the top of the capsule.
What would be the first thing that you would want to eat if you were in space that long?
So the side
Steak.
hatch was never used while it was in space. So this will be the first time that that side hatch will be reopened
Steak.
since liftoff. And this will be the first breath of fresh air that the crew
Like
will
maybe
have
like
since
steak and
liftoff.
French fries.
Like you said, almost.
Damn it! Now I'm getting hungry.
Yeah, that liftoff did take place on Sunday, March 3rd, and Crew
And a
8
baked
docked
potato?
the following day
Yeah.
on March
Yeah,
5th.
steak and a baked potato
Now,
with some
Crew 8
broccoli
actually
or some
docked
green beans.
to the Harmony
Yep, oh, there we
forward
go.
port, but throughout their mission, they did
Look at-
complete
look
a
at-
port
she do be
relocation,
moving,
which
though.
is essentially moving the spacecraft from one port to another. And we are getting a really great view of Dragon as it is translated closer ahead of those recovery
Actually,
operations and opening up the
You know what kind of steak I'd want? Tenderloin. Tenderloin with a baked potato, some green beans.
Before we see the crew
Butter just drizzled all over everything.
important to note that
Medium rare.
Michael, Jeanette,
Do it.
and
Do it.
Alexander will
Do
be
it. I'm
getting
hungry. Do it.
assistance, as they exit or egress from the capsule.
A
They will be
glass of
getting
red wine.
assistance
Yep.
from
Stand by for side hatch opening and egress.
All right, they're gonna note these guys have
Dragon.
good copy from the crew there, noting preparing for side hatch,
All right,
hatch
so like
egress there. Note that all these guys have gas masks on. The first thing they're gonna do is just check again, sniff around, make sure there's no hypergolic fumes in the area. Once they do, they'll start opening up the hatch.
returning to a gravity environment can, wreak havoc with our vestibular system, and which is responsible for maintaining
I'm gonna go make
balance
some
and
awesome
motion.
food when this is
So
done.
safety, of course, is our number one
Return from
priority
space would
with
be a
this
mushroom
operation.
Swiss
So
burger with garlic
you'll see the crew
aioli. Good
members
choice.
helped out
Good
of the
choice.
spacecraft by one by one and assisted with the few feet to
That
the
guy's
medical
sniffing right
quarters
there.
on board the boat.
Guy in the center of the screen.
So nominal procedure
Those are the
is
sniffers.
to open the hatch, do a quick thumbs up check with the crew inside.
It's okay, Squarish. Don't worry
help
about
them
it, man.
Egress one by one, and they will then go into the medical quarters.
Yeah, the flagpole
from,
sniffer.
Directly after egress to
Masks
have
are off.
their first
Nice and clean.
in-person medical conference with the flight surgeons on board. So that will happen for all 4 crew members.
So the first thing they're going to do is
there on the right-hand
what
side
the heck
of
was
the
that?
egress platform. It is a
Dragon Outcast over
rounded
there.
square. It's that white structure there off to the side. That is a piece of protective equipment that we will install once the side hatch is open. That will help
I
protect
really hope that's the Eccles open loop.
hatch, help protect the seal, and also help
I mean,
protect
they
the
clearly
spacesuits
aren't bothered
and
by
the
it,
crew
so.
members as they egress from the capsule. Now, the crew will keep their helmets on, but they will flip their visors up.
Side hatch opening in progress.
Okay. Once they open up the side hatch, you're going to poke their head in, make sure everybody, all 4 crew on board are good, and then they're going to prepare for egress operations. One of the first things they'll do is bring in the protective FOD covers for the seals on the hatch. There it is.
We can see that protective piece being put
See?
in place. Once again, nominal procedure is for each crew member to be assisted as they egress from the capsule.
And we'll also see those footrests be removed as well once we get a little further in this procedure, once they get that protective cover installed. That just helps give a little more room as they help to bring the crew members out.
Yeah, the seal.
As you can see, even folks that haven't spent 8 months in space need assistance getting out of the capsule.
The flange and the seal. The flange for the seal is actually super sharp because it's a precision machine surface, because it needs to be perfect to get a seal so the hatch doesn't leak. It's actually super sharp. That's why they put that cover on there.
We do assist the crew as they come out of any spacecraft.
So all these guys are the capsule egress team. All the guys wearing the black SpaceX jumpsuits. Over here, that looks like Eric Bowe, but I'm not sure. Anybody wearing a blue flight suit is NASA astronauts.
This is also a great view. We can really see.
I can't tell who that is.
The details in the thermal protection system and that evidence of reentry.
I can't see who that is, but that was
before,
another. That was our other
NASA
astronauts.
At liftoff, and while the capsule was on orbit,
Exactly,
was
Stu. That's
nice
right.
White, and we can now see that discoloration reflecting the patterns of heat that the capsule experienced during reentry. As we mentioned, the exterior temperatures can reach up to 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit.
That man is playing
as
Fruit
that plasma
Ninja.
builds up. So I always
He
love
thought we
seeing
wouldn't
how
notice, but we
the
did.
Dragon capsules
No, that guy is
identity,
taking.
essentially as they
See,
as they
that guy
come
noticed.
back and kind of have their own unique fingerprint or.
That guy has the checklist on the phone. That's what it is. That's what he's popular. He's going through the checklist.
We're talking about the other recovery vessel, Megan, and it turns out that Shannon Walker is actually on the recovery vessel as well, helping to assist with this, as well as NASA astronaut Eric Bowe. So
that's awesome.
I was right.
And she's the astronaut that the other vessel is named after.
Yep.
So we can see the recovery team continuing to place the assistive and protective pieces around the capsule. Like Sandra mentioned, we'll see those footrests come out. That helps provide a little bit more moving space for the team to assist the astronauts as they egress. And we'll probably see a wheeled mobility aid come into view here as well for each crew member.
They're NASA astronauts on board, Sue Doug.
And so if you are just joining us this evening, Crew-8 has splashed down off the coast of Pensacola, Florida at 12:29 a.m.
This one completed 5 subsonic.
days in space. They
I
have
don't
been successfully
Clearly it can do a
recovered
lot.
from the water and hoisted up onto the recovery vessel Megan, and they are now working to get removed from the side hatch there that you see on your screen, which is now open. We have recovery personnel that are partially inside the capsule now, just doing a quick check-in with the crew before their extraction. Again, you do start to see some of that recovery equipment being wheeled off to the side there. That is completely normal and expected. We do this for all of our returning crew members after their space flight, so you will see them be assisted onto that before they are wheeled away to do some additional medical checks before boarding a helicopter and flying back to Houston.
It's not a clean room environment,
the
Sambas.
coast of Florida before
No
they
need
fly
for the
on a NASA plane to
baklavas.
Houston to be reunited with their loved ones at Ellington Field.
They'll repaint it before I fly it again, Timbite.
Something I want to point out while we have this particular camera angle, we can see the window, the crew window there, kind of frosted over due to the effects of that high heating during re-entry. That is the side where Jeanette Epps is seated. Now, above that window, you see basically looks like this circular hole.
Parachute mortar.
And that is actually one of two bays, if you will, where the drogues are fitted into. So there's one on each side, as there are two drogue parachutes. And you can also see around the side of the hatch where the lines that connect the drogue parachutes to the main parachutes, you can see how those run around the edge of the side hatch as well. So kind of a cool view to show some of the re-entry systems.
First egress should be happening here very soon.
Systems used for our
Hey,
astronaut
Jono.
return.
And it looks like we are starting to see the first crew member be extracted.
See?
I'm not sure if that will be Commander Matt Dominic or Mike Barrett, but it is typically one of those middle seats because they're easiest to reach.
Matt's first one out.
So again, you do see that crew member getting some assistance. I can't quite tell who it is just yet.
Looked like Matt, but I don't know.
I can only imagine what it feels like to have to stand up after spending nearly 8 months in space.
That's Matt. Look at that
having to stand up for the
crap-eating
first
grin.
time with Earth's gravity.
And that is NASA astronaut Matt Dominic, who is now
He's
out
like-
of the spacecraft. His very first space flight. looks
Yeah,
like we're
buddy.
getting some
Welcome home.
handshakes there.
High fives all around.
Yeah, when you're up on the space station, guys, you got to work out 2 hours every day. Hour in the morning, hour at night, and you never skip leg day. If you stayed up there for like 8 months and you came back down here without working out at all, you will try to stand up and you'll go into cardiac arrest because of muscle atrophy. Basically, your muscles aren't strong enough to hold you up in Earth's gravity because they haven't done it in 8 months, right? And basically what your heart's going to try to do to compensate for that is start beating like crazy to start get to oxygenate your blood to get to your muscles. Right? Yeah, and then your heart will basically redline. That's bad. You got to work out when you're up there. The other thing is that you have to combat bone density loss. Same exact reason. Your bones are structural. They're under the force of gravity, right? They need to stay nice and strong for you to stand up, right? If you don't work out up there, you're going to have problems. You're going to have the same kind of problems. Basically, yeah, it's really, really, really bad for you. Space is tough. It's tough on the body. You wouldn't think because you're just kind of floating around, right? You're just floating around. It's no big deal. I mean, it's nice on the joints. You decompress the joints. Probably the best sleep you'll ever get, right? You just Velcro yourself to a wall and just sit there. Right. But also, if you don't work out and you don't stay on top of stuff like that, it'll end very poorly when you try to come back down.
Whether that was through the shuttle program, Apollo, Mercury, Gemini. So that's a fun fact.
More
So
like
it looks
space is
they're
too nice and
working
Earth
now
is
to
tough.
Extract the next crew member. So we'll.
I mean, are you going to talk about our home like that, man?
It would be NASA astronaut Mike Barrett.
Mikey!
But we'll confirm that just
Solution.
momentarily.
Just stay in space. Dude, if you stayed up there long enough, I don't think you'd, like, I wonder,
In
actually, you
addition
know what?
to the individual.
I wonder if, like, if there's, like, a point, like, if you stay up there for, like, 5 years straight, would you ever be able to come back? Like, I wonder. Is NASA astronaut Michael Barrett pilot
he's
on
the
this
veteran
mission?
on this space flight. The other 3 flyers on board
Help me
Crew 8
up.
were all rookies.
He ended up looking like a belter, yeah, right?
And so, in total,
Yeah,
Mike Barrett has
Saladino,
spent
exactly. Yeah, the
147 days in
Expanse
space.
incorporated
Saw
that
some
into the
excitement
story,
there.
which is super cool.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, Smirks. Cool, cool. Also, belter. Scott. Enters for the win, dude.
So remaining inside Endeavour is NASA
How's this
astronaut
going to work
Jeanette
for a
Epps,
long
as
Mars
well as
mission?
Roscosmos cosmonaut
Basically,
Alexander
Zach, don't skip
Gurbankin.
leg day.
So we'll
That's
see
how
who
it works.
comes
That's
out
the kind of
next.
stuff
You
they're
do see
testing
those
on
footrests
these
as they are
on these
removed from the
missions.
spacecraft to give a little more space for recovery personnel to assist the crew members out.
I think it looks like we might be getting
Right,
Jeanette
Viper?
Epps next.
Yeah, but when you're down on Mars, whereas Mars has 1/3 of Earth's gravity, so that's better than nothing. You're still gonna have to work out almost every day, because coming back from Mars grav, and then 3 month transit in space, and then back to Earth gravity. Yeah, it'll mess you up if you're not careful. So, like I said, space is rough on the body. If you want to come back down, it's really not good for you.
So they're continuing to work to get the next crew member out, and you can really see there's quite a few folks on the recovery vessel. It just really speaks to all
You
those
said
that
just
are
don't come back
involved with,
down.
helping to make a mission successful. It's the recovery boat personnel, the folks in Mission Control Hawthorne and in Houston,
guess.
as well as all around the world. Those
Just
that
bring
support the
Ring Fit with
International
you into
Space
space and
Station.
you'll be
It
fine.
really is a huge
Oh,
team
yeah.
effort to
Yeah,
have
no, that's a
successful
good
mission
idea.
like this. And in fact, there's 44 people on the recovery
Yeah,
vessel.
of course you
Megan,
could, German,
to
if you
help
wanted to do
support,
that.
Tonight's splashdown.
Once again, we're standing by for the egress of our final 2 crew members. Yeah, it looks like NASA astronaut Jeanette Epps will be the next one to exit. Due to the limited space inside Dragon capsule, it's pretty normal to have the 2 individuals seated in the center seats, so the pilot and commander. It's pretty normal to have them egress first, as it helps give a little bit more working room there
Come on,
within
Jeanette.
the capsule for the crew
Come on
members
home now.
and the recovery team members.
Yeah, Heglicious, for sure. Jeanette's cool. She worked at Ford. Yeah. She worked at
And
Ford
I
right
do
out of
believe
college.
That is NASA astronaut Jeanette Epps, who is next out.
She worked at Ford. And then after that, the CIA.
Yep, Jeanette Epps was the next
And
one
then
out,
NASA
so
after that.
Alexander Gurbankin will be next. Again, this was her first space flight. Some quick waves.
All right.
Round
Yeah,
of
Ford,
applause.
CIA, and NASA. That's one hell of a combination. All right. It's pretty good. Hey, that's pretty good. Nice jumps in career there. Dude, imagine looking at that resume. I'd be like, what the hell? Who are you? I can't pilot a submarine. I'm with the CIA. CIA. Shit right here. I feel inadequate now. You should feel inspired, not inadequate.
And we are starting to see
Although,
Alexander Gurbankin be extracted from the spacecraft as well.
Na zdrowie, Alex. Welcome home, buddy.
And
Stood up
Some
like a
thumbs
boss. Look at that.
And we now have all 4 crew members outside of Crew Dragon Endeavour following
baby.
their
4 down.
235 days in space.
He's like, I'm going that
Some
way.
cheers and excitement for Crew-8. That's great to see.
Checking to make sure they didn't leave anybody inside. No aliens as stowaways inside Dragon Endeavour.
What, Kate? What are you trying to tell us?
Well, now that Matt, Mike, Jeanette, and Alexander are safely back home on Earth and getting checked out by the NASA medical team, we're going to wrap up our live coverage of their return. Now, this all kicked off on March 4th, 2024 from historic Launch Pad 39A at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. After a successful liftoff and separation from Falcon 9, Matt, Mike, Jeanette, and Alexander made a 29-hour flight on board Dragon to the International Space Station. Since arriving at the space station, they spent nearly 8 months as members of Expedition 71 and 72, where they executed science experiments, spacewalk, and repairs while aboard the orbiting laboratory.
Their journey home began about 34 hours ago on October 23rd when they closed the hatch to Dragon and undocked from the space station at 2:05 p.m. Pacific time. After 4 successful departure burns and a phasing burn to line up their orbit, Matthew, Michael, Jeanette, and Alexander rested for a few hours before waking up to prepare for re-entry this morning.
Hi, drummer.
We jettisoned Dragon's trunk and performed our final on-orbit maneuver, the approximately 9-minute-long deorbit burn, and that occurred at 11:39 p.m. Pacific, 2:39 a.m. Eastern Time, and that sent Dragon on its path home. The spacecraft re-entered the Earth's atmosphere and slowed its descent with successful deployments of 2 drogue parachutes and 4 mains,
There you go, Viper.
with the final splashdown occurring off the coast of Pensacola, Florida, on time at 12:29 a.m. Pacific, 3:29 a.m. Eastern. Following that successful splashdown, we saw SpaceX recovery experts move in quickly and prepare Dragon
Yes, they
Endeavour
will, Liz.
for
They'll go
its
back to
lift
Johnson Space Center.
into the recovery vessel. And just a little less than an hour following splashdown, we saw Matthew, Michael, Jeanette, and Alexander make their way out of Dragon and into the recovery ship's medical facilities safe and sound.
Next up, they'll catch a helicopter flight back to shore where they'll transfer to aircraft that will take them home. The astronauts will take a NASA plane for the short flight back to Houston, and then they'll be reunited with their friends and family, bringing an end to this mission. It has been an honor and a privilege, the greatest privilege of my life, to get to share their journey with all of you as we continue this new era in human spaceflight.
Return today marks the end of the direct handover that we executed after successfully launching the Crew-9 mission to the space station on September 28th.
Of course, Karina. My pleasure.
Thank you, as always, for joining us for tonight's coverage of the splashdown of Crew-8. Remember to follow SpaceX on X and NASA online and on social media for updates for the very latest on crew and cargo flights to and from the International Space Station.
And we'll continue to share the progress of Matt, Mike, Jeanette, and Alexander on social media as they travel back home. We also do have our post-splashdown media telecon coming up at 2 a.m. Pacific, 5 a.m. Eastern Time this morning, where leadership will share a final update as we conclude this successful mission. So from all of us at NASA and SpaceX, it has been great to support this mission. Welcome home, Crew-8. So long.
No, I'm good. I'm good. I hope you guys enjoyed that. That was Crew-8 Splashdown. We made it. 16 and a half hours. Yeah, baby. Thank you for all the kind words in both of the chats, dudes. It's only 37 minutes. Bro, I've been live for 16 and a half hours. I'm good. I got another stream to do in 7 hours and 30 minutes. I'm good. Okay? We'll cover the damn press conference for space news next stream. You have permission to egress. Roger that, chat. This concludes our broadcast day that's going to wrap it that's going to wrap it up here for us at the Eric Johnson Space Administration. Thank you very much for watching the coverage, guys. I do appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. A lot of kind words. I'm going to go get some sleep. We got to be back here sooner rather than later. Just fair warning, it's hard to do a 16-hour stream and then a 12-hour stream right after it. I might be a little bit late tomorrow, so I'll try for noon, plan for 1, okay? An hour after my normal start time. So if I don't see you at noon, just give me a second. I'm probably like, I don't know what day it is. So I'll see you guys tomorrow for Satisfactory, and then Flame Trench, and then probably more Satisfactory or something. I don't know. Maybe it's just Satisfactory and Flame Trench tomorrow. But anyway, we'll see. This concludes our broadcast day. I'll see you guys all tomorrow or today in a little bit. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good rest of your day, I guess. I'll see you in a little bit. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. You hang up first, okay? You hang up first.